Good afternoon. It is Monday, the 7th of December, 2020, at 2 o'clock. It's the first of today's Bournemouth, Christchurch and Paul's Overview and Scrutiny Board meetings. I'd like to offer you a very warm welcome, and particularly the members of the public that have spent the time to be with us this afternoon. I'd also like to welcome new members to the board, Councillor Derek Borthwick and Councillor Leslie Dedman. And also today we have Councillor John Beasley, who will be speaking later, I hope. And also a very warm welcome to Mr. Richard Carr, who is the Chief Executive of Fortitudo. And he's accompanied, sorry?
Ethan Brighton.
Ethan Brighton, thank you, his colleague Ethan Brighton. So before we carry on, could I just invite our Democratic Services to read some notices about the way the meeting will be conducted this afternoon? Thank you, Claire.
Thank you, Chairman. Please note that this meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Board is being recorded by the Council for live broadcast and will be published on the Council's website for a minimum of 6 months. In order to ensure the meeting is managed effectively, please could everyone present follow these ground rules for speaking. Only speak when invited to do so by the Chairman. Always turn on your video function when invited to speak. Please state your name before you speak if you have not been introduced by name. Some people may need to dial into the meeting and will therefore not have the benefit of the visual. Please mute your microphones when you are not talking. If you would like to speak on an item, please do so by utilising the raise your hand feature in the bar at the top of the Teams window. The messaging bar should not be used unless you are raising a point of order or providing the wording for a motion. Please remember that this panel is visible to all and is subject to public information requests. If at any point you would like to speak again, please use the raise your hand feature again. If a vote is required on any item, the Democratic Services Officer will call out each board member's name, beginning with the Chairman and Vice Chairman, and please respond with for, against or abstain. Finally, please ensure background noise is kept to a minimum and mobile phones and other devices are turned off or switched to a silent setting for the duration of the meeting. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Claire. Just before we go ahead with the agenda, I'd just like to tell you, I think we'll swap the order of the agenda and we'll bring in agenda item 7 before agenda item 6. And this is because we have some guests that probably wouldn't want to stay for the duration of the preceding item, which is the cabinet forward plan, the board's forward plan, which will take some time to go through. So with that in mind, I'll kick off the agenda and we'll go to apologies. I am aware that we have apologies from Councillors George Farquhar and Councillor Vicky Slade. Are there any more that you're aware of, Claire?
No further apologies, Chairman.
Thank you. Substitute members. I am aware that Councillor Lewis Allison is substituting for Councillor Farquhar and Councillor Mike Brooke for Councillor Vicky Slade. So welcome to you to the board meeting this afternoon. Agenda item 3, declarations of interest. Do any members have declarations of interest? I see we have Jackie Edwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. In the interest of transparency, a member of my family works for BCP and for agenda item 8, so I will therefore remain open-minded in considering all that is discussed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Councillor Mike Brooke, please.
Fine, thank you, Chair. Just to declaration when BDC is involved as a board member, I would appreciate some advice as to whether I would be allowed to speak or even vote should there be a need for a vote. Normally, I don't.
Thank you, Councillor Brooke. I guess Democratic Services will wait until that time, or you, Councillor Brooke, when you think the moment would be appropriate to request that advice if necessary.
Fine, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Leslie Dedman.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I've been advised that because I was on the Cabinet previously, I should not participate in the Durley Road car park item, so I shan't be taking any part in that debate. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Dedman. Councillor Mark Howell.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder, perhaps Councillor Dedman can just elaborate on why that is. I mean, obviously that would apply to me as well.
Could I just ask Democratic
Sorry, can I elaborate? Yes, I'm only saying that, Councillor, because I had an email from the monitoring officer to say that although we were only agreeing to delegate the decision, we do in fact have an interest. There is an email on the site, but I think Claire has received the email as well. So
okay, thank you for clarifying
on that.
So I fall into the same category and then won't join the discussion or vote.
I think our monitoring officer has put a hand up for a moment there. Ms. Ice?
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to add that the Constitution provides that if you have taken part in any councillor that has taken part in a decision on a particular item can't be involved in the scrutiny of that. And we had a look at the June 2020 decision in which Councillor Howell and Councillor Dedman took part, and we felt that it was a direct enough connection for them to have an interest in today's discussion. I hope that clarifies it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ice. Councillor Alice.
Yeah, so carrying on the same vein, I'm also a previous cabinet member, so it would apply to me also.
Thank you very much. Councillor Tony O'Neill.
Thank you, Chairman. On the Durley Road one, just for clarification, am I correct in believing that we're here to look at the process and the knowledge that the decision itself was made by a previous administration?
That's not entirely correct, but I will be setting the scene when we come on to that agenda item that should provide clarity to that.
Okay, thank you.
Just moving on then to the minutes of the last meeting held on the 2nd of and the 16th of November, and the action sheet. Do I have any comments regarding the minutes of those meetings or the action sheet from members, please?
Chairman, you are muted.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I was just reminding members if they could turn on their cameras when they're speaking, and I'll try to remind myself to turn my microphone on in future as well. But I think we have agreement basically on the minutes of the action sheet. So now we'll move on to agenda item 5, public speaking. Any public items that we wish to raise?
Sorry, Chairman, there's no public items being raised for this meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so we'll now move on to agenda item 7, and we'll take the forward plan after that one. So I'd just like to say a few words about that before we kick it off. Now, it's probably easier for me to say what this agenda item is not about than what it is about. But I just want to give a bit of background on it. Now, the Durley Road car park site was granted planning permission in January 2020, and the approval to go ahead with the development was given by the Cabinet on the 24th of June. So what this agenda item is about, or isn't about, it's not about the planning decision, and it isn't about the Cabinet approval that's been given for the development. It's also not about the value for money issue. And the reason for that is that this is already being addressed by the Audit and Governance Committee, who have taken on an action to look at the value for money issues associated with the BDC developments. So let's make it quite clear, this agenda item is about the officer decision record, which you've all seen a copy of the report for. So having said that, I'd like to invite our Chief Executive, Graham Farrant, if he would just like to introduce the officer decision record.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a very brief introduction, because I think all members have had a copy of the decision record. It was, as you say, a decision that implements and then completes the decision that was taken by the Cabinet on the 24th of June, which in itself, of course, is a subsequent decision all the way back to Bournemouth Council having set up and signed the option agreement to form Bournemouth Development Company way back into February 2011. So I'm going to ask Bill Cotton in a minute, if he will, just to talk about the process by which a site goes through to put this decision into context. But this was the very final decision on the grounds that the Cabinet had taken a whole range of decisions and had then delegated the final piece, which had effectively, if you remember their recommendation, was to authorise the corporate property officer, that's myself, in consultation with the Director of Finance and the Director of Law and Governance, Adam and Susan, to agree the detailed provisions of the legal documentation, including and not limited to the lease and the loan agreements. And it set an approval for the grant of the lease on Durley Road to BDC for a site lease value of a minimum of £250,000. So the officer decision record was implementing those parts that were still outstanding. We did, as you know, have some discussion regarding a third-party offer. We felt at least I needed to deal with that, but what you will see, I think, for the decision record is actually it's a relatively straightforward decision. The site is in the option agreement with BDC that was being exercised. The decision, therefore, is to dispose of the land under that agreement, and you'll see in there that we took into account the potential valuations, the potential downsides of effectively reneging on the original option agreement that was signed 9 years ago and the costs of doing that. And we worked through and said this was the final decision that would implement it and would therefore be taken in accordance with that. So I think, I mean, I don't want to pick out the detail of the ODR. I'm just going to assume that people have read that. I think if you follow through the decision-making process, then by the time we got to this point, that was the sensible decision and the decision that makes sense. The difficulty I think of this one is that when you just compare straightforward numbers of pounds, it doesn't look like it makes sense. But if you read through and see what the costs would be, the abortive costs, the impact on BDC, the impact on developer confidence, etc., I think that does clarify the issue. I wonder if Bill, if you could just go through the process for the committee, and then perhaps I'll come back and just say a few words at the end of that, if that's okay.
Thank you, Graham. Hope you can see me. I've just sent through a slide to Claire Johnston. It may be useful to be able to put up on screen. Claire, have you received that? Otherwise, I'll just talk it through. Hi, Claire. So I thank you. You've enabled me to put a slide up there. Thank you. That's very helpful. Right, I'll just do that now. Won't be a second, everybody. Bear with us, as they say. Okay, let's hopefully we can get this on. Great. Can everybody see that slide? Yeah, everybody happy with that slide? Can you see that? Yeah, I'm not getting feedback. Great. Okay, thank you. So I won't labour this point, Chair, but just to give you a bit of background of how a site is developed through the Bournemouth Development Company, as it says there, from concept to completion. So, as you know, the BDC was established back in 2011 with an option agreement for 16 development sites, and that was following an ODU compliant competitive process. So the market was searched to find a partner. We found Morgan Sindall, and as part of that deal, 16 development sites were put in an option agreement for further consideration. Now, every year, both the BDC, the council, and Morgan Sindall meet at an annual strategy meeting, and from there they produce an annual business plan, and that is approved at Cabinet every year. And in that annual business plan, it talks about the particular sites that it wants to develop and progress on each of the sites. The BDC board look at those sites and work out what would be a good scheme to put on them, how it fits into the wider regeneration strategy. The site development plan is then produced, and that's actually approved by Cabinet and Morgan Sindall. And that site development plan details what is actually going to be in the site, an outline of the costs, an outline of potential profits, etc., and the potential site value. The detail of that is then put into a planning application. The planning is applied for. Some are easier than others. Once planning permission is granted, the BDC appoint a construction partner in line with procurement policy. In this road, in the case of Durley Road, we've gone to a local contractor, Parsons and Joyce. We then, once the option conditions are satisfied, the BDC then draws down the site, and this is the point we are at the moment. The council agree the land value and the section 123, which is the test, is it good value, through an independent valuer, which is all that detail is outlined in the ODR. And then the construction company starts. They're actually just on site at the moment, putting the Harris fencing up. And the building commences, it's completed, the units are sold, the loans are all repaid, including the land value sum to the council, and the profits are distributed 50-50 between the partners in BDC. Hope that's useful, Chair.
Thanks, Chair. Probably easy to just go back to you straight away.
Claire, did you wish to say something?
No, sorry, Chairman. I was just saying I'll hand back to you at that point and take any questions. It's probably easier rather than speaking again.
Okay, thank you. Claire Johnston, you've got your hand up. Did you need to speak?
Hi, apologies, Chairman. I just wanted to clarify the advice that I gave to Councillor Brooke in the sidebar earlier, that his membership of BDC, I believe, is a local interest, and therefore he just needs to apply the predetermination and bias test if he should wish to speak on this item.
Okay, so are you clear on that, Councillor Brooke?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Mike Cox, could I just hold you just for a minute? Before I ask Councillor Mike Cox to speak, there are just a couple more things I'd like to add to the introduction. Yes, absolutely, we're here to scrutinise the officer's decision in exercising the delegated powers that they have, and essentially the two elements to it, as written in the paper. So what we're actually going to be looking today, and the paper does acknowledge the fact that the site is being transferred at a value less than that determined as the unrestricted value by the independent valuer. And in doing that, our task is to scrutinise the reasons for that, and test the justifications behind making that decision. Another issue that arises is the potential in transferring below that value to state, the issue of state aid, which does have some implications, which is mentioned in the report and which has been already commented on, but I think it's worth that we do scrutinise these issues. There is also the issue, because it's now a matter of public interest, about the site transfer value, and it's in the public domain, and we've seen that there. It's generating quite a lot of interest. And we do know that we have an interest in the site that's been expressed by Mr. Carr. And that's why I've invited him here today to speak, to give him an opportunity to get his view on the decisions that the council officers have made. But before I invite Mr. Carr to speak, I'd just like to go to Mike Cox, who's got his hand up. Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's a few things really. One is you kind of started by saying what this decision or what this scrutiny was not about, yes. But you've just clarified, I think, what it is about. So that was part of the other point I was going to ask for clarification on was the slide that you put up, Bill, would have been helpful if it had some dates to it, so we knew when these decisions took place, because otherwise I think it's a bit too vague. But in terms of, I have some questions about the valuation, but one of the fundamental things I have is and I hope Mr. Carr doesn't take any offence by this, but I don't understand why he's here. Why is an independent developer here giving us opinions about an officer decision? Surely that should be a decision of ourselves, not. And I really don't understand what Mr. Carr and his team what benefit he will provide to us.
Okay, well, I'll answer that, Councillor Cox. Mr. Carr is here at my invitation, as he had expressed an interest in acquiring the site at a considerably higher value than that expressed in the land transfer value under the arrangements with the BDC. I believe that that's a matter of public interest, and I think because of that, we owe him the opportunity of allowing him to explain his view on the decisions that we've taken on behalf of the public, of course. And I believe that it would be useful to give him the opportunity to express his views on this decision.
Can I, but why just Mr. Carr? Why not other developers? Surely there may be a lot of other developers interested in this site on a free, on a free for all. But it's not this is the fundamental point here, Mr. Chairman. This is not a free for all. This site was put into BDC, and therefore it's not a free for all. It's not. I don't understand what Mr. Carr. I'm sure he'll come up with a valuation. I'm sure it's significantly higher than what we've got. But that's because at the moment this site is subject to options. It's subject to costs and options, which he doesn't. He won't have to pay. They've already been incurred. So I'm still at a loss, I'm afraid. I appreciate you've invited him, and I'll be very interested to hear what he has to say. But I'm struggling to understand why we're doing this.
The reason Mr. Carr has been invited because at the time he was the only developer that I was aware of that had expressed an interest in acquiring the site and had questioned several of the issues contained within the officer's decision itself, and therefore I believe it's relevant that we hear his opinion on that, and especially in view of the public interest in this subject. So I hope that answers your question. It may not satisfy it, Councillor Cox, and I'm sorry if I can't, but Mr. Carr is here now, and I'd like to invite him to express his concerns.
Thank you, Chair. You've already said my name. My name is Richard Carr. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Fortitudo, and the first 2 points I'd like to make today are the outcomes that I would like to see achieved today is for there to be an audit of the Bournemouth Development Company and since its inception, and the audit would be very simple. How much money has Bournemouth Borough Council and Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole Council had from the development agreement, and how much money has Morgan Sindall and BCP, Bournemouth Development Company, received? I think that is a very important point. The second point that would be the outcome that I would like to achieve after today albeit that we would be successful. That certain sites go out to competitive tender to get best value for the local authority. I fully understand that the sites like the Winter Gardens are sites that are transformative to the borough and need to be dealt with by an organisation like the Bournemouth Development Company, sat with Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole local authority behind them. And so I want to make that point, and I want to make that point quite strongly. The first issue that I want to discuss is the option agreement, and this or the agreement between Bournemouth Borough Council, obviously adopted by Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole Council and Morgan Sindall. It seems to me that officers make an awful lot of reference to this agreement, but very, very few people have ever actually seen it. And of course, without knowing what's in that, how can any committee make an informed decision on a development? I mean, the Red Book valuation calculations are littered with assumptions, and those assumptions refer to the option agreement. Well, if you don't know what those assumptions are, how can you make an informed decision? Moving on to finance and resourcing implications. A valuer made a value of 350,000 for the restrictive value of this site. Well, how has he got to that? It comes back to the assumptions yet again. If you don't know what those assumptions are and how they were made, how can you make an informed decision? So therefore, I think without saying the word, I think the officers are bamboozling committees with facts that you don't ever get to see. The unrestricted value, which was the open market value of 550,000, equates to only £12,500 per plot. No person in their right mind is going to believe that that site is only worth £12,500 per plot. I mean, if you were to put that on the market at 550,000, you would have a queue of developers from here to Brighton wanting to buy it. My company offered you 1,550,000. Surely does this not question the open market value? In our appraisal on the site, we could have paid you 1 million. Hang on a second. $1 million. The value came out in the appraisal at 1,889,000. So we offered you slightly less than what was actually in our appraisal, because that's obviously what any shrewd operator would do, giving themselves a margin to increase their offer should they wish. As we all know, the council is required by Section 123 of the Local Government Act 1972 to dispose of land at best value. What were the assumptions given to the value? What was actually in that option agreement? Moving now on to planning. Fortitudo put a figure of £335,328 to get the planning to the worst stage case scenario. Quite clearly, the council must have spent substantially more than that. How does the council control what BDC spend on planning? Surely there must be some sort of cap, there must be some sort of control, because it would appear that you've spent, probably double that, if not triple that. The next point I would like to go to is, it was said within the council papers that the council would have to negotiate a release of the site from the option agreement, even if the council's partner in BDC were willing to release the site from the option agreement. it would be reasonable in those circumstances to expect it to seek sufficient compensation and consideration. Was that exercise ever undertaken? Is there not a break clause within the agreement? Again, none of us have seen the agreement. You certainly haven't seen the agreement, Chairman, I believe. And every councillor that I speak to who's asked to see it has never seen it. So there must be a break clause in that agreement, and there must be ways of removing certain sites which you could get better financial benefit from.
Mr. Carr, can I just this decision paper is not about the agreement between the council and Morgan Sindall and the arrangements with BDC. It is specifically about the two elements of the delegated decision to officers. So if you wouldn't mind, if you could just sort of contain it to those two areas, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. If you could continue, thank you.
Okay. The next interesting point, I mean, I think I'm going to find it difficult to do that, Chair, to be frank. The next interesting point is that it's been stated that your profit share is £913,406. We ran the appraisal on your site, putting in your input land value at 385,000, using the build costs that we have recently received on Pool Key, and we come to a profit of 3,623,000. That is nearly double 900,000 each, which would come to 1.8. So that would suggest to us that there is a huge amount of cost somewhere hidden in the appraisal. Now, that could be one of three things, in my opinion. It could be the gross development value is lower than what we've stated. Martin Tippin said, in fact, your gross development value is higher than ours, so it's not that. So that would leave build costs or expenses, expenses including planning costs. So somewhere along the line, there is a very substantial sum of money gone adrift or been overspent on this development, in my opinion, which has forced the residual land value down. The next point I'd like to make is that the Durley Road car park was valued at £1 million as a car park on income. And the report says that in light of the fact that you own other car parks in the locality, that it's justifiable to forget this point and pigeonhole it, because anyone who parked there would now park in another car park of yours. The nearest car park to that is West Hill Road, and West Hill Road car park is one of the car parks within the agreement that you have with the Bournemouth Development Company. So that would seem to be the economics of an 8-year-old. Lastly, but not least, on these points, if I may say so, is that you have, on top of all of this and selling the site for just over £300,000, you have agreed to loan a further £950,000 to the joint venture vehicle. The point I would make to you is that the Bournemouth Development Company are going to get the retention after the senior debt is paid. So that 950,000 is in fact on a third charge.
Yeah. Sorry, Mr. Carr, I'm sorry I have to interject, but it's come to my attention that someone has raised a point of order, and I need to just ask for that point of order to be clarified. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Okay.
Councillor Cox, I'm sorry it's taken a while to get to me, but I see you have got a point of order that you've raised. Thank you.
Yeah, my point of order, I'm afraid, Mr. Chairman, is I've listened very carefully to what Mr. Carr has said, and in no way is he giving evidence to what you said he was going to give. He's based scurrilously making suggestions about BDC, which I think are wholly inappropriate. I've got no particular loyalty towards BDC whatsoever. It's a different time and a different council. So, but you know, if there are problems in BDC, then we need to look at it carefully ourselves. We shouldn't be sitting here listening to accusations about what has and hasn't happened in BDC. I mean, and Mr. Carr has he's making all sorts of accusations about what the value of this site is. Yet, and he's made an offer apparently of £1.5 million. Yet his own company, which has made that offer, is worth £7,000 on paper. And this is just not, this is no evidence whatsoever.
Yes,
We should be dismissing it, I'm afraid.
Councillor Cox, Mr. Carr is not giving evidence, he's giving his opinion, which he was asked for, and that's related to this.
His opinion on the decision of the officer. He's not doing that. He's giving an opinion on other matters, which is not acceptable.
You will have the opportunity to question Mr. Carr later on if you wish to. Thank you. Could I just, Chief Executive, do you have a point of order you wish to raise as well? And I notice that Monitoring Officer Susan Zeiss also has her hand raised as well.
No, Chairman, so I raise my hand to respond as and when this this part is finished.
Okay, thank you, Chief Exec. Susan Zeiss, please.
Chairman, I was just going to make the point from a point of procedure point of view that I think that the subject matter in part is straying from the topic of the item, and any debate or discussion or evidence should be related to the topic which you outlined and not stray into other areas, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. With that in mind, Mr. Carr, if you could just sort of wrap up, I'd appreciate it.
I will read my conclusion notes instead of going on any further with that. And in summary, then, the delivery of 44 apartments by BDC at Durley Road Car Park has taken 6 years to get to this stage. The BCP officer decision record makes legal reference to the option agreement, for which nobody at this time has seen, I don't think. Well, obviously some people have seen it, but not many. The Red Book valuation in which the recommendation was made was based on assumptions, which again, nobody to date knows what they are, except obviously very certain people. The facts are that the market test showed that the open market valuation was a third of what it should be based upon the inputs of the assumptions, because the actual disposal was under a quarter of the Fortitudo offer. Within the joint venture contract, there must be a break clause which would mitigate or confirm any compensation. Within the decision, they state that the planning costs plus the compensated loss of profit would exceed that of the Fortitudo offer. This suggests that the planning costs to date exceed £636,000, which would be 200% of what we at Fortitudo would have based our costs on. All the other benefits with the financing and resourcing section would apply regardless of who developed it. And thank you very much for giving me the time.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. Chief Executive.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to respond to a number of those issues. First of all, I do want to ask Mr. Carr just to withdraw the comment about bamboozling, which means to cheat or fool or to deceive by underhand methods. If he believes that any officers are trying to cheat or fool or deceive by underhand methods any of our committees, please name those officers to me in writing immediately. Otherwise, please withdraw that comment. Then I'll carry on with my explanation.
I will withdraw that comment.
Thank you.
I probably write to a separate cover at a later stage.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Carr. Thank you. The issue about the option agreement, which I think is a bit of a sidetrack here. If I'll ask Susan Zeiss to comment on that, but I think that option agreement would be available for councillors to see. I'm sure if councillors have requested it, they will have been given that. That is not a secret document. The way that local government works, of course, is that we do most of our decision making in public. Hence, this officer decision record, for example, being a public document. But if councillors are concerned about the option agreement, then I'm sure that they are happy to have a copy to look at. It'll be under the normal confidentiality clauses, I would imagine, because I would imagine it's commercially confidential. But we can ask Susan Zeiss to confirm that. I do think we're having the wrong discussion here. I think if this discussion is intended to be about value for money of BDC and the efficacy of BDC, then I have no problem at all with an overview and scrutiny board looking at that in its widest sense. Indeed, we are commissioning, I've been talking to the leader, and we're commissioning a VFM review of the BDC arrangements to date, pretty much as was described, and we're using local partnerships, which is a partnership between the Local Government Association and Her Majesty's Treasury, to do that review for us. So we're just confirming the brief at the moment, and that will be completed early on. So again, opportunity for overview and scrutiny to look at the BDC arrangements overall. This officer's decision record, I think the points that Mr. Carr has raised regarding evaluation, I understand a bit about the numbers. I think that the numbers, if he goes through them and we look at what's actually spent on this, what the officer decision record doesn't quantify is any compensation that could be required by our partners in BDC were we to remove this completely from the option agreement. And I have to say, I think most of the issues we're discussing here were pretty much signed up to when we entered into the option agreement and when those sites were registered. Of course, any sites that are not within the option agreement we would normally put them on the market in the normal way. We would seek tenders, we would seek competitive tenders for that, and we would take into account not only the number of pound notes that somebody's offering, but also deliverability against our social and regeneration and economic ambitions as well. So it isn't a straight numbers of pounds wins, although of course at times that can be the case. But generally, for this, we'd be looking to achieve economic outputs, and we'd want certainty of delivery. What we have with BDC for this officer decision record is, having signed this officer decision record based on the decisions already taken by Cabinet and beyond that, we get certainty of delivery because they're on site delivering. That's the purpose of this BDC arrangement. And it was originally brought in, just to remind members, at a time when development was not happening at the scale that was wanted in Bournemouth Council. Now, I believe that Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole Council actually has higher aspirations and higher levels of ambitions, as we've demonstrated by acquiring the Hulls Bay site, by taking forward Poole regeneration as well as Bournemouth, as well as Boscombe. But I think that's an issue for another day. Once these sites have gone into this options agreement, I think effectively, then we get to where we get to today based on the figures that are available. I get that. Somebody could look at the site and say, I'll give you more today for that site, but we wouldn't have certainty of delivery. Whatever assurances we had now, we just would not have certainty of delivery in the timescale that we've got here. I don't know whether Susan Zeiss wants to add anything in terms of the legal implications at all.
Only just to add that the contract should be available. It should be on our contract register. It's something I will check. It may need to be redacted in part due to the commercial sensitivity, as anyone would understand. But by and large, all council contracts entered into are usually available. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Zeiss. I saw a hand earlier on from Councillor Farr. Do you wish to speak?
No, that's okay. The moment's passed. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Lawrence Fear, I saw your hand earlier too.
Thank you, Chair. No, my point's been covered.
Councillor Mike Cox, do you want to come back in now?
I think actually Graham Farrant has just basically said everything I was thinking myself. So I think he's summarised it perfectly. I don't understand why we've listened to this evidence. I don't think it's any relation to the decision before us. The point I was trying to understand from this decision was the difference between the red book value and the price that's being offered, and I'm assuming that must have something to do with the costs, which Graham Farrant has talked about in terms of what BDC would be able to claim from us if we didn't go ahead with it. I'd be interested to know how that difference is made up of, and I think that's a fair question to ask in these circumstances.
Mr. Farrant, would you like to respond to that, or would you like someone else?
Could I send to Bill? I don't know if Bill has got any detail on that. That was in terms of the any additional costs that either Morgan Sindall or BDC could claim if we were to withdraw the site in terms of loss of profits on development.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, that would be a commercial negotiation with our partners at Morgan Sindall, and yeah, they would quite rightly want to be recompensed for the efforts they've put in so far.
And potentially, sorry, what I was thinking about was potentially if we withdrew a site for which they had a reasonable expectation of delivery, this site they've got planning permission, it's there, then their profit on build would presumably also be claimable.
Yeah, although on this particular case, it won't actually be them building it, but on another scheme, you're right, they could actually end up being the contractor as well. Yeah.
Mr. Carr, I'll come back to you in due course if you don't mind. I'd like to give some of the members questions. Councillor Millie-Earl.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to raise that I find this very uncomfortable. I think we should move on as soon as possible, please.
Thank you. Do we have any other members wishing to speak? Councillor Tony O'Neill.
Yeah, just a couple of questions. There's been mention of penalties if we didn't go ahead with the project. Would the same penalties be applied to Morgan Sindall if they withdrew? Is question one. And question two, it was mentioned about section 123 of the Local Government Act, disposal of land of best value. Could someone clarify how the decision meets that requirement? Thank you, Chairman.
What if I could bring Adam Richards in on section 123 requirements?
Yes, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Richards.
Yeah, I actually refer members to the decision record because I think the actual decision record goes into a lot of detail with regards to a potential undervalue with regards to section 123 of the Local Government Act. So I think that actually spells it out within the actual decision record itself as to how we arrive at that value and what the consequences are if it's not in line with that. The decision record doesn't is or isn't, but it actually works on the presumption that if it wasn't, actually what would we be looking like or looking for to ensure that we are still, if you like, legally compliant, and that goes into quite a lot of detail around the original objectives of Bournemouth Development Company and how it's achieving the council's ambitions as set out at the time and developed through the annual review process with BDC.
Thank you. Does that answer your question?
It answers my first question, Chairman. That doesn't answer the second one.
Yeah. Can we chair to help answer one of those questions that was hanging there about the if there are penalties for?
Yes, about the reciprocity in the contract itself.
Yeah,
exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, well, the BDC is a jointly owned company, owned 50% each between Morgan Sindall and the council, and so it's got deadlock provisions. So we tend to have to work together to agree things. In fact, it wouldn't be around penalties. In fact, Morgan Sindall, the Morgan Sindall part of the business actually pays money up front and forwards funds the work around planning. So they're actually out of pocket early on rather than the council. So if they didn't want to go ahead for any reason, it would be themselves that'd be out of pocket.
Thank you for that clarification. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Susan Zeiss, Monitoring Officer.
Thank you, Chairman. I think Mr. Cotton has more or less answered the question for Councillor O'Neill, but I was just going to say contractually Morgan Sindall are bound by terms of a contract in a similar way to the way that BCP is bound. So yes, there would be contractual penalties and potentially damages should they wish to withdraw, but we shouldn't forget that these are options that are at the option of BDC to take up rather than being insisted upon from BCP's point of view. So there's a certain amount of discretion there, but yes, they would be contractually bound in the same way as all the other parties to the agreement are.
Thank you. There'll be no other members to ask the questions, but I do have some questions myself, if you wouldn't mind. And the first one is regarding the independent valuation report. And I'd just like to ask if that report was conducted, did it take into account any other market offers outside of the data supplied to them by the BDC? In other words, were the market offers taken into account in that valuation? Can anybody answer that, please?
I'm not sure. I didn't think the offers had been received at that point, but I don't know who's best placed to confirm that, whether Bill or Adam. Sorry, both looking blank.
Yeah, sorry about that. No, I'm pretty sure those external offers, of which they keep coming in, were not considered at the time. It was basically based on that wider market intelligence about what the site is worth, but also its existing use as a car park, and that's what the core valuation is based on.
They should, the fact that those offers had been made, and I believe they were actually made before the last independent valuation. Should they not have been taken into account with that independent valuation at that point? If we were aware of those offers, would it not have been appropriate to advise the valuer that those had been received?
To come back to me, I'll answer that, Chair. To be honest, people make all sorts of offers all the time on various sites. This site is being considered as part of that option agreement. It's not for sale. It's not open to offers from other people. So the site was valued on as I said, its existing use as a car park and current market conditions around and sites around it.
Thank you. And I guess that brings me to the next point then. I mean, how do we really know and understand what the market value is for a site unless it's offered to the market? What you're saying, I think, is that we haven't got the ability, because of the constraints that we are under with the contract that we have, not to do that. And I would put the question to Mr. Richards, does he feel that he is constrained by the contract that we have, whilst at the same time meeting the obligations of the Localism Act of 1972, Section 123? Can you actually make that judgment, given that you don't have the freedom to put it out to the open market? Thank you, Mr. Richards.
Councillor, my response to that is I think we're straying into the realms of value for money of the BDC agreement, which I thought you said at the beginning you didn't want to stray into and would be a matter for the review by local partnerships of the BDC arrangement. So I'm slightly confused by the question, but can I just pick up a couple of points? First of all, regards to the valuer, just to emphasize that I do believe it was an independent valuer that undertook the work, and that was double checked or double checked by Homes England valuers as well, who actually we have a relationship with. So I think there was a lot of independent scrutiny and assessment of that valuation as part of that judgment. Now clearly, when we come to the value for money of this aspect, I think we have set out in the decision record, the conclusion that we came to as part of the assessment that this was the right thing to do in considering that value for money judgment, because as I think we always reflect on, this is a judgment call, it is subjective, and what's not lost on me is that we went to a full OJU advert, or Bournemouth Council did back in 2010 as part of that original process, and that was supported then by the Regional Development Agency. So a lot of support, scrutiny to ensure that robust arrangements were put in place, best practice some time ago back in 2010, which has clearly been carried on through the developments that have occurred under the agreement since then.
Sorry, Mr. Farrant.
Sorry, I just wanted to add a little bit to that. I think that's the issue here. That one of the things Richard Carr says, if we put the site on the market for £500,000, we get a queue of people to buy it. Well, we would obviously, but that's not the total valuation, is it? Because what we're saying is we're getting the £300,000 plus the £900,000 profit share, plus avoiding paying back the planning costs, etc. So when you value something, you value it on a set of principles, as Mr. Cotton has put in the chat. You don't take account of offers because there may well be a special purchaser. When you value it according to the market and based on the basis of those valuation principles. Now, if you then decide you are able to sell it in the open market, then you might find there's a special occupier or a special purchaser who wants to pay a premium for it for a particular reason. But that's not normally what you wouldn't normally take that into account in valuation unless you had a market that was in a particular special circumstance. But you wouldn't normally take into account a single offer, I don't think.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Farrant. Can I just clarify, Mr. Richards? What I was specifically asking was not about value for money. It's whether, in meeting the requirements of Section 123 of the Localism Act, is it difficult for you to make that judgment when you have to comply with a contractual obligation? And does that put you in a difficult place? Because if you're aware of what the market value may be outside of the valuations that you see, you have to make a decision on that. Now, I just think that, you may be not being able to meet the requirements of the 123 because you're constrained in doing that. You really don't have a choice. You have a contract here that you have to meet. So how at the same time do you look at the legislation and say, well, actually that's okay, but you don't really have anywhere else to go, do you?
Well, clearly, in making that kind of assessment, I'm going to be reflective of the agreements the council have in place about the independent valuations as part of the agreement and structure to the BDC arrangement that was been put in place. Clearly, a much simpler process is, just straight sale, highest bidder as part of that process. But that's not the process that we're in at this moment in time, because we did set out a development agreement which is contractually binding, some 10 years ago now.
Yeah. Okay. Councillor Mike Cox.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, actually, I think Adam Richards just dealt with a number of the points I was about to make. But what I would say is that any offer can only be accepted if it's got proper proof of funds and backup. And as far as I'm concerned, we've not had an offer. We've had somebody coming out of the blue. I could do that with one or two of my companies and make a bigger offer if you want. But it's utterly pointless as far as I'm concerned. The Red Book value, as far as I'm aware, is done by a qualified chartered surveyor. And as I think, I can't remember who said it, but that was backed up by, is it Homes England, something like that? In which case, that that seems like a perfectly acceptable valuation, and one which I'm quite happy to accept on the basis that it was done by a chartered surveyor. Chartered surveyors are very fallible, as I know, because I used to work for them. But we just have to accept what they come up with.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. I've just got one more point. In terms of market value, and terms of stamp duty, land tax, and this probably goes into the area of potential for state aid. Now, if there is a valuation in the open market of, say, £2 million or something, the stamp duty land tax generated from that is fairly significant, but clearly one that's much lower doesn't. So I think, there is a beneficiary there of a lower stamp duty land tax if a piece of land is transferred below it is what is perceived to be a true market value. The other issue is one of the financing for the development company itself and the source of the loan coming from the council. I just wondered what the source of that loan is. Is it government money that's being lent on, and if so, is it being offered at rates that are less than currently available in the open market? Mr. Richards, perhaps you could answer that, please.
With regards to the loan to the Bournemouth Development Company, that is part of the council's overall treasury management strategy, and the management of council's cash as part of that process, which is regularly reported on, as you will be. We're chaired to the Audit and Governance Committee on a regular basis. With regards to giving a loan to the Bournemouth Development Company, that is, however, strictly regulated, has to be in line with ODU and European law on the definition of state aid. So there is a very clear matrix that governs the rates at which we are able to offer that money to the Bournemouth Development Company, which is then matched by the council, by Morgan Sindel as part of that process. So yeah, the rate at which we think is governed by European state aid rules.
Thank you. And the issue on stamp duty?
Well, I think the stamp duty, I would need to take advice, because I think it's a very complicated legal matter, and we would need to do a little bit more. I'd need to take some advice from various officers to be able to provide you with an answer on that aspect.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cox?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Oh, sorry, your hand is up from a
Sorry,
previous
put it down.
occasion.
Your pardon.
Okay. All right, thank you. Right, I think we've probably gone as far as we can now with this debate, but I would like to give Mr. Carr just one opportunity just to briefly comment on the discussion, please. But if you can make it very brief, please, Mr. Carr.
Of course. 2 points I'd like to make to all the councillors that are listening today. I was invited to give this evidence today by Councillor Bartlett, so we've obviously put quite a lot of work into that, so I just wanted to make that point. The second point was to Councillor Mike Cox. Councillor Cox, at this present time, in fact today we started a £9.4 million build of 64 flats on Poole Quay. Quite obviously the company that you researched isn't the company that would be doing those sort of things, and at this present minute we're building over 100 units in some places over the conurbation that you're a councillor of. So, and we employ over 12 people in this head office. So I do take that comment you made with regards to the net worth only being £9,000 rather insulting. But I appreciate all the points everyone's made, and I thank you for listening to me, and thank you very much, Councillor Bartlett, for your time.
Thank you very much for attending, Mr. Carr. And Mr. Richards, your hand is still up. Have you finished? Okay, thank you. So, I think the aim of this was to scrutinise the officer's decision. They clearly, from what's been told, have followed the processes and procedures that they have to abide by. Whether you agree with the valuations as from the independent valuer and what the real world will offer, it's neither here nor there. The fact is that the processes have been followed correctly in accordance with the processes and procedures, and so I sort of conclude here that the officer decision is it's been taken correctly. And I would not criticise them at all, but I would say that the issues regarding value for money will be addressed by the Audit and Governance Committee, and I look forward to hearing from them and the independent report that they come up with. So with that, I think we'll close this debate down. Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Carr. So moving on then to the forward plan, if I can find it. Excuse me a minute. Right. Just for a bit of background, we had our development session to think about the forward plan, what we would like to put on it, etc. But before we come to that, I'd just like to talk about the oncoming work about scrutinisation of the budget and the budget plans. Now, we had planned to do a bit more work on that fairly early in the year, but we've sort of been overtaken by events, because I understand that the leader of the council has decided to open up the budget for discussion in December and invite all members to participate in that in a very detailed session where each element of the budget will be delved into. So whichever bits people are interested in, they're going to be able to do that. And that, I understand, will be followed up by a second session in January. Now, the opportunity for overview and scrutiny in formation of the budget and influencing the budget is always fairly limited, and it generally results in the scrutiny of the budget paper when it comes out in February. And given that that's what usually happens, I think it's fair to say that we probably end up doing the same again and getting the budget presented for full scrutiny in February before it goes to Cabinet and obviously on to full council. So I just wanted to just run that across members to make sure that, or to ask you if you're content with that approach in terms of our approach to scrutiny of the budget, given that there's going to be quite an involvement, or as much involvement as any member actually wants to take in this process. So could I just ask if members are content with that approach with regard to the budget? Okay, I don't see any dissent or hands going up, so I think we'll take that as a given then. The next thing, just in general terms, following on from our overview and scrutiny development day, what came absolutely crystal clear is that members generally want to get ahead of the decisions. Typically, we scrutinise papers that are just about to go to Cabinet, and very often it's much too late in the day to hope to be able to influence what's happening, although there's clearly an ongoing need to scrutinise important decisions. But there was this overwhelming desire to get ahead of the policy formation for each of the portfolio holders. And so what we would like to do, if possible, is to introduce a portfolio holders session, a briefing for overview and scrutiny, and have one of the two sessions that we have filled partly or by a brief from portfolio holders, where we'll discuss what's in their mind, what their ideas they have, what they're working on for the future, and how their strategies are developing. Now, there would be a theme for that particular overview session. It will have associated with it a framework, and the framework will be basically a bullet point framework. So we won't be just going in cold. We will have some information prior to that review. We will also, or we intend, if you agree, that we would push out to all members across the council and hope to get them some involvement in the overview and scrutiny process, that they can also consider what's coming up for the portfolio holders, and we would invite them to ask questions which can then form part of the debate, rather than it be a straightforward question and answer type. It will actually help form the discussion that we have for the portfolio holders. So hopefully everyone will get involved in this, and hopefully we'll start getting ahead of the plan and get a bit more involved in formulating strategies, etc. So this would be a trial, we'll just a question of seeing if it works. If it doesn't work, then we'll change it. But we thought that the first, given the impact of the budget on the economy and regeneration programme, we thought as a first step we might like to invite Councillor Phil Broadhead as the first one in January to an overview session. And then following the following month in February, whose name I forget at the moment, who's terrible, the environmental portfolio holder, I do apologise, I've had a senior member here, but someone is typing, Mark Anderson, of course. Yeah, so a lot of members raised issues in our development day about environmental issues, and that's why we would put him on, if he agrees to do this, of course, in the second session in February, and then possibly followed the following month by Mohammed Iyengar as the portfolio holder for tourism. So that's just a general approach. I just want to run that past you and see how you feel about it. And if we're happy with it, or there's no dissent from that, just like to accept in principle. Okay, Millie Earle, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I like that approach. What I would maybe for that to not take up the whole meeting. I think I'm just a bit worried that there is a lot on the cabinet forward plan. So maybe if we can just get a balance that, you know, it's time sensitive, and that other things on the agenda are maybe given a little bit of priority as well. But I like the idea of hearing what's coming up from those portfolio holders. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Early. So many papers coming through, and I think we probably wouldn't be able to afford a complete session for one portfolio holder, because there are still other important things to scrutinise. So, but I think generally that's the approach, to try to get ahead of it, give some time to portfolio holders. Councillor Philip Broadhead.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to Councillor Earle and Councillor Butler for agreeing it wouldn't be for the whole session. I'm because I can talk for a lot, but you probably wouldn't want to hear me too much. But no, I'm more than happy to be the guinea pig on this, not least because I share your enthusiasm to try and get ahead of some issues on the forward plan. And as we all know, you don't know what you don't know. So I see it as a really good opportunity to take any questions and give a little bit of an output of what we're working on, but also to explore with board members areas that it would be very useful to get more involved with, areas of concern, and really just an exploration of all of that area, so that we can really try and make sure that we get as many members involved early on, rather than the point for involvement just being when the decision is coming to fruition. So lots of key things in my portfolio portfolio area, and more than happy to do a bit of a summary beforehand, but then, you know, ask whatever questions you want at that meeting. I think it would be very, very helpful.
Thank you very much for volunteering, Councillor Broadhead. Very kind, thank you. So with that then, it seems we have a broad agreement that that's an acceptable approach. I'd like to quickly go through the forward plan. We do need to tidy it up a little bit, and just so we understand where we're going. And if possible, I'd like to try to agree the agenda items for January and February. If we go to the forward plan, I hope you've all got a copy in front of you. But on the 4th of January, we have our meeting, and some of the items that we've got down for that. We've got the cultural compact in there. These are the others. We got the cultural compact. We got the community regeneration strategy. We've got the BIC long-term strategy, the fleet replacement strategy, and I think that covers basically what we would hope to accomplish in January, if there's no dissent from that. But of course, if anybody has got anything else that they'd like to bring forward, if you could, you could let me know. We can be flexible on this. If you could let me know, and we'll see how we can get it into the plan. And then for February, as I said, we were already thinking about one meeting covering the budget scrutiny, and then we're looking at. Oh yes, I think we probably would need at some stage another COVID council's response to COVID, which we thought we would do in February, because things will have moved on a bit, hopefully for the better by then. So I think that would be useful to put in there. We've got the economic development strategy coming up in February. So I think, given that we would by then already have had a brief from Councillor Broadhead, that would fit in quite nicely if we looked at that in February. There is one other thing that I wanted to talk to you about, and that is with the local plan, work on the local plan. There's been a lot of work going on. We know it's a really vital piece of work, and that's coming forward at some point. And what I'd like to do, with your agreement, is to maybe form a working party to start looking at the plan as soon as parts of it become available. My understanding is that whilst all the strategies haven't actually been written down yet, a lot of the preliminary work has been. And so I think we'll start to see some information coming out in January. And I'm not sure, but I think that the papers may be coming through in February or March. I'm not quite sure about that, but you know, in line with our general attempt to get ahead of decision making, this does provide a really good opportunity for overview and scrutiny to do exactly what it says it wants to do in a constructive way that can really add value to the process. And so I personally think this would be a really good thing for the overview and scrutiny board to do, is to construct this working group. And what I would suggest is that we would have a group of, say, six people, and we would have 2 members from each of the geographical areas, if you like, 2 from Paul, 2 from Bournemouth, and 2 from Christchurch. And we'd be looking for volunteers if you think that this is a reasonable thing for us to be doing. A word of warning, though, it will be a big job. You know, the local plan is a major piece of work, but it is so important to the way we're going forward as a council. So I think it would be good for overview scrutiny, and it'd be very good to add value in what we do. So could I just ask if, you know, has anybody got any views on that, or any dissent from that approach? I'd appreciate it. No, okay, Councillor Mike Cox, thank you.
Just a comment really in terms of your geographical apportionments. I suspect you're overrepresenting Christchurch, and I shouldn't probably be saying that, but 2 doesn't sound exactly proportionate.
Okay, I'm not sure. Do we actually have 2 people on the panel from on the board from Christchurch?
Yes, we do.
We do. Oh, okay. Oh, you're from Christchurch too, aren't you? Well, you know, nothing's ever going to be absolutely 100%, is it? You know, but you know, if you're happy for me to actually take a lead in deciding who's going to go on it, it's just an idea. But we're looking for volunteers as well, and we may well have to open it up to other members that are interested in it. Don't have to be on the overview and scrutiny board to participate in the working group. But I you know, personally, I'd be quite happy to lead it as well. And I think that would have some benefits in terms of the coordination between the working group and the overview and scrutiny board itself. So if you're happy with that approach, then let's go for it. Councillor Kelsey.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I think it's a very good approach to take. Actually, I'd quite like to come and sit in on that one. It'd be quite interesting to do, and I think as a Bournemouth rep, yeah, definitely like to take part, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kelsey. Very good of you. So I look forward to receiving other volunteers. So if you could let me know if you do want to go with that, which I think brings us to the end of the forward plan discussion. Let me just have a quick look to make sure I've covered off everything. I think there may be some things in here we may need to just either move or take away. Currently for commissioned work, we do have working group organisational development and estates and accommodation strategy. Well, that was put on the commission work list before the decision was made to use the Bournemouth Civic Centre, as it's now called, as the headquarters. There is also a corporate assets management paper coming forward in April to Cabinet. So I actually think that both of those things sort of overtake events as far as this item is concerned, and I, with your agreement, I'd like to take it off of that. I'm also mindful that we can only actually run one working group at a time, because we only have support for one working group, and I think that the local plan one is the one that should take priority. So unless anybody disagrees with that, I'd like to take that off for plan. I don't see any dissent. So the next issue on there is the working group Economy, Tourism, Impact of COVID-19. Now, that working group did not meet, but we've had several sessions where the council's response to COVID-19 has been given at an ONS meeting, and we've also got it on the agenda for February in terms of the COVID aspects. But in terms of economy and tourism, we are looking for a cabinet paper coming forward in January on tourism. So I think that we can wait until that paper is presented, because it will cover the strategy of tourism. I think we could probably wait for that and then decide at that point if we would like to resurrect at any point a working group on that particular subject, which is vitally important, I accept, but not one that I think that we can sort of initiate at this time. Is there anyone can dissent from that now? Okay. On other items previously agreed for scrutiny, we've got a couple of things on here which may have been subsumed by events. The item 8, pay and reward strategy. Now, clearly, pay and reward strategy is going to be coming along as part of the transformation programme. We'll be hearing a bit about that today. We can leave it on there at the moment, but I'm not sure. I think probably we can just leave it on there. We don't have to take it out. We can always consider it at a later point. But I think a lot of that work will come out through the transformation arrangements. Item 9, Poole Town Centre Master Plan. Yes, I think we'll leave that in there, and some aspects of that will come out in Councillor Broadhead's brief in January in terms of regeneration and what the plans are. So I think we should probably hear a bit more about Poole Town Centre Master Plan in January anyway, but we'll leave it on there the time being just to make sure it gets covered. Other items previously agreed, the Lansdowne digital pilot, which was all about the monitoring of the EMF emissions for the 5G network that's going in as a trial at the Lansdowne. Now, at the moment, the network is not actually established. I think we should leave it on here, but just to note that the network will soon be up and running, and you can monitor this in real time. If you actually look at the Council Smart Places website, if you look at it, you will see the emissions that are currently being emitted, or the RF emissions that are being emitted at the moment, and you can see what the safe limit is, and what's currently being measured in those locations at the Lansdowne. So it'd be interesting once the 5G network is actually up and running. You'll be able to see, the public will be able to see just by looking at the website what they are. So that'll be interesting. And I think item 13 is Tricuro. I don't know how members feel about this, but I do feel that it's probably an issue for the adults and overview and scrutiny, adults and social care overview and scrutiny, rather than ONS itself, given that they have a statutory responsibility in the area here. And I think, with your agreement, I'd like to ask if that could be taken over by, or put to the overview and scrutiny, adult and social services overview and scrutiny panel, if that's okay. Okay, no real dissent. We have added a couple of items to the forward plan for the road maintenance and the tree management, which were items raised by Councillor Tony Trent. I've had a discussion with him and we're scoping up some work for a report for that. We should hear probably in February if Councillor Mark Anderson wants to cover the environmental issues, a bit more about those issues then, but that's on there. And lastly, Carter expansion project, which was previously on here because Councillor Nicola Green was a member of this panel, was just going to update the overview and scrutiny panel about that. Not sure, it needs further consideration. Anybody got any view on that one? My view is that we should take it off. No dissent. Okay, we'll take it off. Right, so that's the forward plan dealt with. So we can move on now to the next item on the agenda, which is scrutiny of transformation and finance related cabinet reports, organisational design acceleration of transformation savings for 2021 and 22 budget. Could I call upon a leader of the council, Councillor June Mellor, to introduce this report to us? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and very pleased to bring this important item to you. As discussed in the paper, there is a need to consider the potential to bring forward some of the benefits of the transformation programme. The November Cabinet, first of our administration, we looked at measures to close the MTFP gap of 50 million and agreed to formally include a 15 million savings target for 21-22 in relation to transformation. If useful, Chair, and just to be clear, the savings level in this report is entirely consistent with the previous administration's transformation policy. As a bit of an overview, I think it's fair to say we're very fortunate to be one of the only authorities that are facing the pandemic whilst planning a large-scale transformation programme because of where we are in our LGR journey. This means we have worked.
Councillor Mellor, your sound has just disappeared.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're okay now.
Okay, brilliant.
Can you just go back? If you could just go back a paragraph.
Yeah, fine. So effectively, what I was saying, Chair, is we're really fortunate to be one of the only authorities facing the pandemic whilst planning this large-scale transformation programme. So we've effectively got a lot of these work streams in place that will help us make these savings. It's fair to say we are bringing them forward at a much greater pace than we would have been outside the pandemic, but we do have the work streams to deliver them without adversely impacting on capacity. How are we going to achieve it? Primarily by taking an enterprise level rather than a piecemeal or silo approach to savings. This is through the identification, and you'll see the title in the report, job families. It's going to be something we'll be hearing quite a lot about. Those taking similar tasks in often small and discrete teams, and by bringing these together, there is a belief that we can bring output forward whilst reducing headcount. There's also going to be some work in relation to third-party spend, which is the second of three reduction categories. We're focusing on those two for this piece of work. CMB have established, in terms of third-party spend, a project team to implement a procurement category approach, which should benefit us greatly. Although the majority of the savings are looking to come from the headcount reduction stream in this 15 million. So both of those work streams, headcount reduction and third-party spend, will be worked up over the next 2 months, so at some pace, and are reporting back initially through the CMB team, and will be built into the 21-22 budget. I think fair to summarise, Chair, that this is my long-held view really regarding transformation, and what we can't lose sight of. The quicker we can deliver the benefits of transformation, then the quicker our resources can genuinely be diverted to deliver priorities for investment in frontline services. The proposals contained in this paper do represent the necessary next stage in our, what is already our award-winning transformation programme. So it's about how we're going to deliver £15 million of savings next year. Very happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Members, has anybody got any questions? Councillor Leslie Dedman, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. It's a question on this really interesting paper, and thank you very much for that, Leader. On, I think it's 17B, where we talk about, I think, the consequential impact of what you plan to do, the speed at which you plan to do it. And you mentioned changes to services, and I'd just like some reassurance that these changes will be as minimal as possible. And obviously, bearing in mind my previous portfolio, they won't affect the vulnerable in our society. So thanks, Chairman.
May I respond, Chair?
Yes, please, Councillor
Yeah,
Miller.
great. Thank you, Councillor Dedman. Absolutely. So a couple of things in that. Most of these savings are by pooling job families together. It's where people, communications is a reasonable example. You've got people performing comms in one team and another team. By bringing it together, we're hoping to get the same level of service and not, have to reduce service. Specifically in relation to your previous portfolio, you'll be aware, and everybody will certainly see through the budget cafe that we're going to be doing a significant more investment going in. So it's absolutely the point, I think, to be honest with you, by transforming our often our back office, we're able to actually put more into our front line. So more money will be going into where it's needed, and that's very much the aspiration. So I know you talk about 17B, and you're right too, but it's absolutely our aspiration and our belief that these consequences will be in back office and not frontline services.
Yes, thank you very much, Leader.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, my comments were is that I thought the report didn't actually deal with the opportunities that the pandemic give us in this respect, because actually, and I think it'd be worthwhile stating that in maybe this report or the next report, is that this is, and you've said it actually live today, that this is the opportunity to accelerate some of these changes, and I think that's an opportunity that we should look at very carefully. However, I do have an issue that it's done in the right way, because otherwise, as Councillor Dedman has already said, I think the points that are raised in 17, you did seem to gloss over slightly the effects. These are the consequential effects that will come about. And my concern would be that we would be in the process of firing people that you're wanting to transform the way we do things, and that's really not a good place to start. And that there will be an awful lot of communication with staff needed in order to alleviate some of these problems. But I suppose one of my main major concerns is actually the report deals with the consequential effects. And like all of these things, there are always unintended consequences from doing this sort of things, and it's the unintended consequences that will come back and bite you or whoever's doing it. To be honest, not just you. And so it's I think that there are two things that I come out of this. Is one is the communication strategy and staff and with their representatives. And the other one is actually to do with monitoring the capabilities the capacity within the council. There's one thing that we seem to be struggling with, particularly in planning and clearly within children's services, is a capacity issue where things are not getting done as quickly as they should be getting done. And if we're going to lay off people, then that will just get worse. And I would rather be in a position whereby we took the opportunity of this pandemic to improve our capacity and not. I think you've got lots of challenges here, but I think communication has got to be the key to this, and making sure that everybody's on your side. Thank you.
Councillor Miller.
Yeah, thanks. I'm not entirely sure I saw a question there, but I'll respond broadly, Chair. Fully agree, actually, in terms of the opportunity. That there is opportunity in the pandemic. We only have to see through new ways of working. But what are we actually, what are we actually going to do? It's about efficiency, but there's also, a necessity for what we're doing here. I'm a strong believer. I think you're right, actually, about comms as well. Internal communications are going to be, fundamentally important. But there's a benefit in here as well about just getting there quicker. It's about getting the people that are going to be with you on this journey quicker to reduce any sort of instability. So that's something I think will actually be a benefit to us. You touched on unintended consequences. You've got to play that against the consequences of actually not doing this. And I would repeat back to my statement when I introduced the paper. We're really, really fortunate that we're striking this crisis, this pandemic, with plans about how we're going to achieve savings. A lot of other councils are just having to cut things. What we've done before is we've just cut, and you get smaller and smaller teams. And where does that lead us? It leaves us with capacity issues, and it's not the way to do it. It's about taking this is called transformation. It's about taking that enterprise level view of how we're actually going to build a really excellent authority. So effectively, I wasn't quite sure what you were saying in terms of you want to improve capacity effectively, but also not doing some of these savings. Just to be really clear on what we are going to do, we are going to improve capacity in areas we need it. You'll wait and see our budget that will be coming forward in February, and we're certainly going to be investing in children's services. We're certainly going to be investing in planning, because we're going to. We appreciate what needs to be done, and we're going to put priority areas and resourcing, where it's needed. So I don't think there was a question, but I've hopefully given a sort of a rough answer to some of the statements that were made, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Mellor. Councillor Cox, are you okay with that?
Yes, thank you. There wasn't a particular statement. The unintended consequences is I'm not suggesting for a minute that you don't do some of these things. I'm just saying it's the way you actually do them that's important. So I do think we need to be careful. One, on communications, which you've already accepted, and then the other is actually measuring the capacity and making sure that whatever we do. Actually, we can measure the capacity, that's the effect that these measures will have on that capacity, and that needs to be constantly monitored.
Yeah, agreed. And it's through the enterprise level approach that we'll be able to do that. That's the key.
Thank you, Councillor Allison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, following on from the points that Councillor Cox has made there, this report states that the administration plans to bring forward a significant proportion of the FTE reductions prior to the delivery of the technology, business process change, and the full introduction of the new ways of working. And it also states that this programme extends beyond what was originally intended and communicated to staff and trade unions. So with both of those points in mind, could I ask, as a numerical value, how many meetings has the leader or his cabinet members had with any trade union representatives to discuss the impact of these job losses on remaining staff capacity and their ability to deliver services effectively going forwards?
Yeah, thank you very much for that. So just to be clear, the what this isn't different is different from your administration's numbers. So nothing has changed in terms of that. So this is exactly the same as what you were signing up to do when you were a cabinet member, Councillor Allison. Thank you. Yeah, so I haven't been to any meetings with trade union, the trade unions at this point, and I haven't been invited to any, and I haven't had any dialogue, received any dialogue from them. Very happy to engage as and when people would like to speak to me.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Allison, are you okay? You're fine. Thank you. Councillor Kelsey.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. A couple of my points have been answered. Just in relation really to Councillor Cox's comments. I mean, we are already streamlining. If you think that this week alone, we are having a licensing meeting which will transform all three boroughs into one, all three areas into one policy, that's going to save time management, staff hours. We've done the same with the SBD, which we're looking at later on parking. Again, that will come in across all three areas, which at the moment all three areas have a separate issue. So again, that's going to save time and staff and everything. One thing I was going to ask Councillor Mellor, Leader, is have you already spoken with many staff members, and do you have tie-in from their heads of departments, etc., that this is going to be the best way forward for us.
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor Kelsey. Yes, so we kicked that off on day one, actually. So in terms of the first Cabinet and CMB meeting, day one of this administration, we were fundamentally clear that we want to be making sure our money is going to the frontline services that need it, children's services, health and adult social care. So this administration is absolutely committed to that. So all of our portfolios holders have had to sign up to effectively that this is the approach. And so we are speaking at length, to corporate directors, service directors, also going through the organisation, speaking to other staff, and it's been a really interesting and good 2 months to be able to do that, to really pick up with lots of people throughout the organisation. So yeah, absolutely. This is we're a people business, anytime you're trying to do this, it's cultural change. You do it with people, not to people. It's about bringing people with you. And it's a little bit about where I came to the point around get there a little bit quicker, because effectively, that's what people are crying out for, that certainty, and we're certainly going to be doing it with people, and we think we can create something really exciting, streamlined, modern, and efficient in terms of doing that. But we'll only do that if we bring those people with us.
Thank you. You're muted, Chairman.
Thank you. I haven't asked you to speak yet. It's because we do have a list at the moment. And at the moment, we've got Councillor Jackie Edwards, followed by Councillor Howe, Councillor Brooke, and then Councillor Mike Cox. So Councillor Jackie Edwards, please.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Mellor, it's to do with your phrase job families. I just wondered if you had any ideas on expanding apprenticeship schemes to help our younger people in the area.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. I'm a strong advocate of apprentice schemes, and there's a real necessity now to do it as well in terms of what's actually looking to be some of the challenges faced by people under 25s and lack of jobs there. Yes, we are. I mean, just to give you one example, we've talked at length recently about how we can extend apprenticeships to our care leavers, effectively as corporate parents. This is the family business, if you like. So yes, there are schemes in place around that. Certainly welcome more. But it's not about removing cost and replacing them with a cheaper cost. But it's about trying to bring forward effectively opportunities where we can, but particularly in relation to our corporate parenting responsibilities.
Thank you. Always glad to hear helping some of our youngsters sort of start on the career ladder.
Yeah, thank you. Great.
So, Councillor Howell, please.
Yeah, thank you. I'd just like to focus on the issue that does seem to be different from the situation that we left the new administration and they have inherited, which is the change. I think it's paragraph 14 or 15 in the report, or 15 in the report, which basically, as Councillor Allison said, says that the reduction in headcount will take place in advance of adaptation of ways of working, introduction of new technology. Now, clearly, this is going to potentially put a lot of strain on the workforce. We're going to be asking people who are already stretched to do even more because there will be less people without the systems in place for them to actually do that well. So by reversing the system, reversing the process and doing the technological change at a later point, we're really in danger of really affecting the mental and physical health of our employees, I think. And there is a line in the human resources section at the end of the report that refers to issues of well-being, etc. But it just says that we will have to, as a council, develop a solution to those problems as they arrive. But the reality is surely that if we do cut headcount, then we are going to be putting and not benefiting from the benefits that we'll get from transformation, because we haven't done the technical side of things. We will be just putting more strain on the officers.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mark. It's sorry, Chair. May I respond?
Yeah, please go ahead, Councillor.
Yeah, just to be clear on a couple of things. The 15 million that's in here now isn't a new number. So effectively, that was a number from your administration and also ours. What is different is the fact that that's actually been put into the MTFP. So the process to
I wasn't talking about numbers or figures. I was talking about the impact on employees of the fact that they're going to have to work with it, have higher workloads working with existing systems.
Yeah, I will get to that part of your question, Mark. But what you did also say was trying to say that there's something different about the different administrations' responses to it, which was an implication that we were doing something differently to you.
Well, you are doing something differently to us, because you are trying to do the reduction in headcount before the technical transformational element. So that is, are you saying that that is not different?
Yes, I'm saying exactly that, Mark. It is not different. The £15 million number was muted around for this year, so for 21-22. That was in your administration.
I'm afraid that's not what the report.
Councillor Howell, could I please ask you to address your answers through the chair? This isn't just a two-way dialogue, please. Thank you.
Well, Chair, it's just not what the report says. The report says that there's a change in the order that transformation is going to be delivered, and that the consequence of that is that the technological and ways of working, if you look at clause 14 or 15, it will happen after the reduction of headcount, rather than them being going along in parallel, which the report says was the situation that the previous administration left. I can point, it's in the report.
Thank you. Councillor, just a moment, please, the leader. Councillor Howell, I wasn't disagreeing with the points that you were making. I was merely trying to introduce some discipline into the way the discussion
sorry,
was
and I did address it to you, that point, Chair. So, yeah.
Okay, Councillor Miller, thank you. Would you like to respond?
If I would like to explain to Councillor Howell why he's wrong. Effectively, the original plan from the beginning of the transformation agenda was to largely wait until the savings could be delivered through IT and other sort of structural change. What the £15 million was as a response to the COVID situation, which was a part of your administration. So your administration, which I completely agreed with, because we, as you saw from the transformation paper the Conservative group brought forward earlier on, we said you actually need to be going quicker and harder and faster than you are, because we need to be directing more money to the services that need it effectively. So your administration moved towards where we were on that. This is at a scale even further than that because of the COVID situation. So you're just not correct in saying that this report is talking about bringing in this money as a new piece. The answer to your question, one of your questions, is around job families. As I've said before, you don't have to always have more people to do more work. If you can bring people together to support each other, there's an opportunity to work more efficiently, and we're challenging the council to work more efficiently. So. And I think if you actually then look at what the possibility and the potential is, you only just have to look at what we've done through since March with new ways of working. This council is already working in ways and in efficiencies that it was never able to before, because we've adapted and we will continue to adapt. Absolutely, you are right in the fact that this is more challenging to do it. I've always believed that more should have been front loaded to the programme, and it wasn't ambitious enough originally, but the extent of this now is a hugely ambitious piece of work, and there will be challenges with it, but we need to make sure we're working more efficiently and putting more of our resource to the front line, not in terms of our back offices.
Thank you, Councillor Miller.
Sure.
Yes, I was going to ask, would you like to respond, Mark?
Yeah, Councillor Miller accused me of being wrong there. I'm afraid here's the one that is wrong. I read from from section 14 of the report. However, given the impact of the pandemic on the finance budget of the council, it is proposed to change this sequencing within the programme. So this is not the previous administration changing the sequencing. This is the current administration changing the sequencing within the programme and choosing to bring forward the headcount reduction ahead of the technical transformation. And you know, this council, this administration, is responsible for the overall management of the finances of the council, and which incorporates the response to the COVID pandemic. You know, we've been assured by the current administration that everything is tickety-boo in that respect. And you know, but you know, if one delves a bit deeper, it seems that what they're doing is placing additional stress on the system, and particularly on the employees. You know, that if they do not have much better ways of working to work more efficiently from a technological perspective, then they are going to be under more stress. And we already know from, you know, for example, you know, the adult social care, children's services area, how much strain they're under already. But you know, planning is, it seems, falling apart as well in many ways. So you know, can we really seriously ask our employees to take on even more without a proper plan of how they will be looked after? You said you would, Councillor Melly, you said you would take the employees with you, but how are we going to see that? What kind of what plan is going to come forward to be able to give the employees the security that they are going to be looked after? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Howe. You've made your point quite clear now, I think. Councillor Miller?
Yeah, thank you. I'll repeat. The 15, you're not correct, Mark. The 15 million for 21-22 was yours. You know, that was your number. You might not have read the papers, but it was your number. What we have done is we've hard coded it into the MTFP. So it's just a point about timing. So at some point we said, yes, we'll accept your figure. You know, I think it's ambitious. Well done for that. You have my credit for it. But it's you know, that's a figure, you know, we're both agreeing on. So all we've done is put it into the MTFP, which, rather than talk about it as a savings target. So you know, I'm being quite clear that we have a disagreement on that. But
you keep chair. Can I ask an officer response on this? But clearly the leader is continuing down a pattern of accusation that doesn't bear any relationship to the point I'm putting across here. I'm not arguing about 15 million or finances. I'm making the point that the current administration has changed the sequencing of the actual transformational practicalities. And as a consequence of that, that will have a significant disadvantageous effect on our employees. You know, I would, you know, prefer, you know, we normally would expect to have the councillor accompanied by an officer who can, you know, give clarification on these issues. Is there somebody available?
Councillor Howes, I'd just like to interject, and before Councillor Miller comes back on this, because I'd like to broaden it slightly, because it does sort of fit in with one of the questions I was going to ask. And I do understand that Councillor Brooke and Councillor Cox and Councillor Richard Burton are also waiting to speak. But I hope you don't mind me just trying to broaden this out a little. And that is, actually, there is risk associated with this policy, and it is a question of what risks are there in total on our services, on our staff. You know, this is an ambitious programme, and it's not without risk. And I think the issue is about how we identify those risks, how we mitigate them, and how we handle the process forward. Now, I think we're at a very early stage at this at the moment. I'm not going to give you the answers. I'm going to ask Councillor Mellor to give the answers. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chen. You're absolutely right. This is a bold programme. It's an ambitious programme. You know, it needs to be managed properly. There is absolutely, you know, risk involved in this. we're in a situation of generational crisis in terms of finances of local authorities. I draw you back to how do we manage that risk? And well, again, I draw you back to what I said about us being in a really significantly fortunate position that we already had programmes to look at how we were going to save £50 million a year into our budget. So we manage it through proper process. Lots of other councils having to grapple the same types of budget gaps that we've got without any transformation opportunity that they're started with because of the LGR process. So Chair, I agree with you. We've got to manage it. I believe we will. We've got an excellent team of officers who are leading on this, and we've got an administration that's committed to this.
Thank you. I want to give the other members an opportunity to come in now, please, if you wouldn't mind, Councillor Howe, and I'd like to invite Councillor Mike Brooke to speak. Thank you.
Fine, thank you, Chair. Much of what I was going to ask has been discussed, commented on already. It really is disingenuous of Councillor Mellor to say that it's exactly the same document and process other than putting the 15 million into the medium-term financial plan. And I'm not interested in the 15 million. It is very clear that there is a change of process taking place, and it is clear that the pay and reward scheme is going to be put back 3 to 6 months, according to the report. And also according to the report, there are some very, very significant risks, as you yourself have rightly suggested. What I'm concerned about is, can Councillor Mellor specifically give us the risks, especially the high-level risks that are referred to in the summary? Not only give us and specify what they are, but also suggest how they are going to be mitigated. And what I'm really concerned about is, because of those risks, there are going to be capacity risks and service level risks and reputation to the council. So while this is going on, if there is a failure of this process and this scheme, and there is very, very little information in this paper about the costs, very few are specified, they're all estimated, or we don't know at this stage. Yes, it is early days, but that increases at this point in time the level of risk associated with this paper. So if we can have some idea of the mitigations, what the risks are, what the mitigations are, and subject to those not necessarily succeeding, what is plan B?
Councillor Mellor.
Very similar answer, if not the same answer to your question, Chair. Yes, there are risks. Yes, there are material risks. We are at a very early stage of this. This 15 million was only hard coded into the MTFP last cabinet. But you'll also see in the report it talks about bringing forward these proposals in the next 2 months. So it might be early stages, but it's going to be fast paced, and we believe we're able to do it. How do you mitigate risk? How do you mitigate risk in any organisation? Doing your job properly, having a clear plan, looking, professionals, employing professionals. We've got a highly experienced officer team dealing with this. We've had some of the best people, professional services firms in the country. We're not talking about, some small accountancy practices. This is, KPMG have done a lot of work with us on this. We're looking at a partner going into 21-22 with a partner. There's a near £40 million budget, which a lot of that would be professional people supporting us in doing this. We've always known, and you've always known that transformation was materially about headcount reduction, and it's about but doing that in a planned and measured way. So. Yeah, Chair, I can't keep repeating myself. I can't keep telling Mark Howell I disagree with him. I can't keep telling you and Mike Brooke that there are risks, but we're doing our best to mitigate them, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bell. Councillor Brooke, did you want to come back?
I would do, but I think I'll leave some of the other questions till later or another time.
All right, thank you. So we've got now Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It was really I think Councillor Mellor is absolutely right that this does need to be managed properly. But asking people to do more without giving them the tools to do more is creating a major risk, which I don't believe is factored in. And as paragraph 28 says, there are, it quite clearly indicates that it will create issues to do with the staff, which we need to plan for. And also the other point I wanted to make was to come back on, I think it was what Councillor Lewis was talking about, in terms of the communication strategy and talking to representatives. It's I think I noted that Councillor Mellor sort of said that the door's always open. Well, if you're dealing with this sort of radical transformation of people's lives, which at the end of the day these are people that work for us, and we have a duty of care towards them, you need more than a passive communication strategy, which he seems to employ. You need if I be so bold as to say a sort of a hyperactive communication strategy, where he or the senior management team should be all over the staff, making sure that they're okay with what's going on. So I think those are the 2 points I wanted to make. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thank you, thanks, Mike. Come back to again, I'm repeating it myself a lot, but the risk of not doing it. And where would the risk be if we didn't do this? We wouldn't have any money. We wouldn't have any money to, so we would lose control of our frontline services. We'd have to take a pure cuts approach, which is what's been applied for the last 10 years, to a point where we can't salami slice anymore. We've got to take a different, an enterprise level approach, and that's what we're doing here. Talk about a duty of care to our staff. Absolutely, of course we do. We've also got a duty of care to our service users. And we've got duty to our taxpayer as well. If we're not, we want to put money towards our frontline services. That's what we want to do, and we're going to do that. Just to give the committee some reassurance, communications program, internal communications program going. One of the brilliant things about Teams is you can get people together really quickly. So there's a full work stream going where senior officers and myself are invited to talk at some length about the job family process and how that's going. So there is significant comms work ongoing.
Thank you, Councillor Mellor. Now I'm conscious that Julia Oscarthorpe put his hand up just a moment ago, but before I ask him to speak, could Richard Burton just speak, please, and then I'll come back to Julian Oscarthorpe. Thank you, Councillor Burton.
So, thank you very much, Chair. And just to be transparent, I'm here as Chair of Children's Over and Scrutiny rather than a member of the board. So my question is particularly about children's and children's services. And I would like to thank Councillor Mellor and other councillors who've actually already mentioned children's services, because it is a very important area. And I do accept that children's are probably not quite as far down the harmonisation route as some areas of the council, and there are some areas of savings that could be made there. But I'm also very aware that there's particular challenges within children's at the moment, and both because of COVID and other reasons. And some of the challenges are as a result of funding. Some of them are due to harmonisation. And you're probably also aware that staffing within children's are feeling quite criticised and vulnerable. So what I'm really looking for is some assurances that any savings within children's services are reinvested within children's services to improve the service, rather than being directed to other places.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you, Richard. It's a really important point, and just gives me the opportunity to underline that children's services and what we're going to do there in the next 6 to 9 months is an all-member priority, isn't it? It's something we all agree on in terms of that, and we've appreciated the cross-party support that we've been offered recently on it, which is great. So it is the #1 priority of not just this administration, but I know the council at large. I'd say actually, really interestingly, and I think the Director of Children's Services, our new director, has been a breath of fresh air in that regard. There's something we often miss about transformation, but it's actually the opportunity to do things better and differently by embracing it. It's not all about savings. It's not just about savings. It's about how we can work differently and how we can move forward. So what has been really exciting is to see actually the embracing of transformation agenda by the Children's Services senior team, not around savings, but around restructuring and how we can actually work better. You know, net more money, considerably more money is going in, Richard, and certainly will be next year, a material amount more next year. So you have my absolute commitment that on that the budgets will be increased, not decreased. We need to get there quicker. That's the point, and I actually think that's about the whole organisation, but it's particularly relevant in children's services. You know, you run a number of organisations, and you know, uncertainty isn't good for anybody. You know, let's understand what the structure is. Let's put more money in and invest in it, and you know, let's get to that environment, because then you can get the right people, you know, on your bus going positively forward with you. So yeah, and I just agree effectively with your points, Richard, and I hope I've been able to give you some comfort in some of my answers.
Well, I say thank you very much. Thank you, Chair. That's very reassuring.
Thank you. Mr. Oscarthorpe, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Other members have their hands up, so it's probably more appropriate to invite them to contribute first.
I think we've had everybody, but Mark Howell, Councillor Howell, has got his hand up. But I did say that I'd wanted to hear from you first, and then we'll have one last comment from Councillor Howell, and then I'm going to close this debate down because we need to move on.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I wanted to make a couple of points, but reiterate some. Firstly, with regards to the communication and engagement, Councillor Mellor has already made one of the points I was going to make, but we do have a structured programme of all staff drop-ins where myself and other senior officers and Councillor Mellor are invited to present what we're doing, why we're doing it, how we're doing it, what we think it means, and then respond to staff questions. That process is ongoing. I would also just like to give members some assurance that the team do meet with all the recognised trade unions on a regular basis to cover all aspects of the transformation programme. So that is ongoing as well. I'd also just like to a lot has been made of paragraphs 14 and 17 in the report without too much recognition of paragraphs 18 and 19. So yes, we will be introducing the reduction in headcount, or proposing reductions in headcount in advance of the full implementation, the full effect of the new ways of working, new technology. At the same time, as Councillor Cox and Councillor Mellor said earlier in the meeting, and as we recognised in the Transformation Cabinet report in June, and the Estates and Accommodation report in the last cycle, we have made enormous strides in the last 10 months in terms of introducing some aspects of the new technology and new ways of working, and we do believe that we have opportunity to capitalise on those. But the real essence of paragraphs 18 and 19 is for us as an organisation to acknowledge that £15 million that's proposed as to be realised in the way that the paper sets out, if we don't do it this way, as Councillor Mellor has said, at an enterprise level, fully looking at and anticipating the effects across the organisation, then those savings would be being found within small teams, within small services, and we would not necessarily be able to see all of the same potentially higher risks of impacts, adverse impacts on our ability to deliver services by comparison to the way we're proposing to do it. So this is about adopting the principles and the mindset and the perspective that we've talked about through the transformation program. So operating as one organisation at a strategic level and mitigating, identifying, managing and mitigating the effects of the reduction in FTE and headcount that we've all known was coming for some time since we started the LGR journey, more effectively through the use of an enterprise perspective, through the use of tools and techniques such as job families, and through the introduction, the more rapid introduction of some aspects of our technology change and ways of working than we had anticipated previously. So I think that's the point I wanted to get across, that, you know, paragraphs 18 and 19 are acknowledging that if we don't do it this way, the alternative ways of finding those savings as an organisation may represent more risks to frontline service delivery than if we do it this way, which is considering at an enterprise level, looking across the piece. And if I use one very specific example of how this can help and benefit us, through the last 10 years, as all local authorities have contracted, business support staff have inevitably borne the brunt of many of the reductions, the proposed savings reductions. And it is difficult to really think about at an individual team level how we could reduce that business support further. And yet, if we aggregate the business support into a job family across the organisation, what we see is that we still have more than 325 FTEs, full-time equivalents, operating within a business support role. If you apply that with Teams and paperless working, all of which we've been able to speed up the introduction of over the last 10 months as a result of the pandemic, we do believe that there is real opportunity for us to realise savings that are capitalising on the rapid introduction of some aspects of our transformation programme, while also acknowledging that we need to start thinking and acting at an enterprise level in order to identify and more effectively manage and mitigate the risks. So I just wanted to perhaps give a more complete perspective on all aspects of the paper than perhaps we've focused on in the discussion today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Oscarthorpe. Councillor Howell, could you just come in now? And after this, I'd like to close this discussion, if I may. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I mean, it seems to me that Councillor Mellor picks and chooses the financial state of this council according to his forum. You know, in recent meetings, he's been saying what a wonderful job the current administration has done in terms of balancing the books, which were already balanced. When we left him, the previous administration left the current administration with a very good financial position. There's just been a movement around of a few figures within the budget, and also Councillor Mellor has decided to incur more borrowing. You know, that's the reality of the situation. Another reality was that the council was in a very difficult position in terms of funding before he took over, and it's still in a difficult position. So you know, I don't really think it helps for him to present that somehow that he's turned things around in that respect, because he hasn't. Now, in terms of this particular issue, it's interesting about the children's area in particular. We saw from a Facebook post from an employee last week that we have a lot of staff vacancies in that area, and a lot of agency staff being employed by the council. Apparently, the cost of twice the cost, pretty much, of a single employee. You know, when we're in a situation, if we get to a situation where you put too much stress on employees and we're forced into a route where we're dependent on agency workers, that is a very expensive model and a very difficult thing to get out of. And that's the danger of what happens if you stress the system too far. And I'd like to make a recommendation for us to be put forward, is that cabinet before introduces within its process that it's putting forward here assurances that let's say introduces a process whereby the support and well-being of employees will be assessed in relation to the proposed changes and documented before those changes are actually actioned, and that those reports are made available to councillors, all councillors.
Before I ask members' comments on that, do you want to give a response, Councillor Mellor?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Would love to. Couple of points.
Can I ask you to be brief, please, because we're really running out of time.
I'll be really brief. If £49.7 million MTFTP gap was a very good position, then I worry for anybody you know, who believes that. We're not there now. We changed it. Even the previous leader, sacked or said she was going to sack her finance portfolio holder. So in terms of saying we haven't done something markedly different on this, then I would disagree. You talk about costs and losing costs around staff, and you're talking about agency costs effectively. But how do you deal with that? How do you get out of that very difficult situation? You invest in programs. You invest through transformation, not salami slicing. This is what we're doing here: is enterprise level transformation, not salami slicing. So hopefully that's brief enough for you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to comment on the recommendation that's been proposed before we? Councillor Allison.
Yeah, just to confirm that I'm happy important that the employees' mental health and well-being is integral part of the considerations going forwards. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor O'Neill.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's an interesting proposal, not one that I'm inclined to support for the following reasons. Major change is not risk-free, but not changing is full of risk. I do believe that we have a professional team of directors, officers and other officials processing change. And we've heard much about that from Julian and others this afternoon. I'm convinced that they will operate to best practice under human resources. And I don't think we require to take any other steps. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Mike Cox.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I put a proposal in the chat in terms of a recommendation, which I hope you and others might find acceptable.
Okay, shall I just read it out?
You can.
Let's see if this is what Councillor Howes is saying. Sorry. Okay. Proposed change in recommendation. Approve the principle of accelerating the transformational savings, notes the proposed new approach and requests that the council continue to consult staff extensively and continuously monitors the council's capacity, particularly within children's services. Is this the same recommendation or one that meets your purposes, Councillor Howe?
Yeah, it doesn't fully meet my concerns that this is just talks about consultation, where my recommendation was that the council actually produce reports on the effects on support and well-being of the staff prior to proceeding with the proposed changes. So yeah, I think this is a weaker proposal that Councillor Cox has put forward down, so I'm less happy with it.
Okay, I'm just going to have excuse me a minute, I just need to see who's got their hands up. We've got Councillor Lawrence here and followed by Councillor Mike Brook. I'm sort of tempted to try to summarise your recommendation, Councillor Howell, if you don't mind, to see if that does fit with what you're suggesting, and then to see if Councillor Allison agrees with that, and then get comment from the people that are waiting to speak. Are you happy for me to do that?
Yeah, have a go.
Yeah, I think the recommendation is that Cabinet introduces a process of reporting that supports and is then communicated to staff prior to any implementation.
I think it needs to be communicated to councillors as well, or to members of this committee.
Do you want to try to write it down in the chat bar so we can actually see exactly what you're saying? But I'll just go to, I think we understand the broad tenor of what you're saying. Councillor Allison, are you content with the suggestion?
Yeah, I think so. I think if we could add a line into the recommendation that's been put in the chat box about ensuring that we report back on people's well-being as a consideration of how we move forward with the transformation process.
Okay. Democratic Services, I don't know if you can try to just grab hold of those words and put it in a paragraph that we can all then agree on. But in the meantime, whilst you're trying to do that, could I ask Councillor Fear?
Thank you, Chair. And just regards to point of order, it's just been cleared up just then with those two points being put into one. I feel after what Councillor Mellor has said and the good robust debate we've had over this, I feel most corners are covered, and the primary thing we need to do now is get on with the task in hand. I feel that at the core of this, the Cabinet, and if Councillor Mellor would just like to confirm this, will be doing everything they can possible to make sure that people's well-being, the communication levels will be at the highest regard, and how the paper stands at the moment, I don't feel it needs to be altered in the way that's been proposed. Thank you, Chair.
You're on mute.
Sorry, I've done it again. Sorry, I think Councillor Mellor has actually already given that assurance in his answers he's given already, but I do have to deal with the recommendation that's been tabled on the committee. And I hope Democratic Services are working on that. But in the meantime, we do have a couple of people waiting to speak on it. But if I could please ask people to be as brief as they can, because we are running out of time, as I said before. And I think Councillor Mike Brooke was next.
Fine, thank you, Chair. It was just to confirm that I'd be quite happy to second Councillor Cox's proposal, but equally happy to see an addition into that one regarding the well-being of staff. Okay, so we've got, well, can we just deal with one at a time? Let's deal with Councillor Mark Howes first of all, and Councillor Leslie Dedman.
Chair, I've just tried to put the two together. I've just put it in the chat bar.
Thank you. Whilst I'm having a look, Councillor Leslie Dedman, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. And I've just seen what I think is the finished proposal, which notes the proposed new approach and requests that the Council continue to consult staff extensively, ensure adequate support is available to staff to ensure their well-being during the transformation process. This is the bit that I would like to put my own piece in, and continuously monitor the Council's capacity, particularly within children's services. I would think that if we're going to single out children's services, can we please put in adults? Because I think if you're mentioning one, you have to mention the other. So would either the proposer and the seconder be happy with that, please?
Councillor Howell, you happy with that?
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
Councillor Allison?
Yes.
Councillor Brooke, would that then meet your requirements? Yes, it would. Okay, so we have I think we've talked this one through now. So we have a motion to approve the following recommendation. Notes the proposed new approach and requests that the Council continue to consult staff extensively and ensure adequate support is available to staff to ensure their well-being during the transformation process, and continuously monitor the Council's capacity, particularly within children's and adult services. So that's the recommendation. Democratic Services. Well, first of all, let me just ask, is there any dissent from that recommendation? Right, Councillor Brian Dion.
Sorry, I was just dissenting.
Okay, all right. I think the hands that are up appear to be dissent, so we will have a vote on this. Democratic Services, can you conduct a vote on this, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Just for clarity, I just want to confirm that this is the recommendation that was put in the chat bar and confirmed by Councillor Howe, and it's been seconded by Councillor Lewis Allison.
Correct, but of course it does have the extra word of adult services in it as well.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so yeah, if you could go ahead.
Okay, if everyone's happy, and I will continue with calling out each board member's name in turn, and if you could respond with for, against, or abstain. So firstly, Councillor Bartlett.
For.
Councillor O'Neill. Councillor O'Neill. Sorry, I think you're muted.
I said abstain.
Thank you. Councillor Allison.
For.
Councillor Borthwick.
For.
Councillor Brooke.
For.
Councillor Cox.
For.
Councillor Dedman.
Sorry, for.
Thank you. Councillor Dion.
Against.
Councillor Earl.
For.
Councillor Edwards.
Abstain.
Councillor Farr.
Abstain.
Councillor Fear.
Abstain.
Councillor Howe.
For.
Councillor Kelsey.
Against.
And Councillor Rigby.
For.
Chairman, that was 9 votes in favour, 2 against, with 4 abstentions.
Thank you. So that recommendation is carried. Now, with your consent, I'd like to now close this debate down. We do have to move on with another very important issue. If you're happy for me to do that, I'd like to move on to agenda item 9, which is regenerated related cabinet reports. And this is the Wessex Field Site Development Strategy. And I believe this is being presented by Councillor Philip Broadhead. Could I invite you, Councillor Broadhead, to introduce your paper?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. Delighted to do so. I'll try and be relatively brief because I'm conscious we haven't got a tremendous amount of time and I'd like to leave as much time for questions as possible. But as the paper sets out, this is regarding the next steps of the Wessex Fields development site. And it's something that I'm extremely excited about. As you all know, I'm an excitable person anyway, but this is something that I've been working on for some considerable time. It's a piece of land acquired under one of the previous councils when I was a portfolio holder there. And the aim then, as now, was always to bring forward a Wessex Fields a science park, and in particular to focus on Meditech. And it was interesting looking through the most recent, the last press releases and information we had in the later days of the then Bournemouth Council. We're now in a position to bring forward pretty much exactly what we were always intending to. And I just read out some of the things that were talked about then. It was conceived through an industry-driven science park, a culmination of a desire by sector organisations to bring forward a living lab in Dorset, working in conjunction with the university, the then Royal Bournemouth Hospital and the council, and the vision for the science park fulfills the objectives of enabling a rapid acceleration of research and innovation, particularly in the Meditech sector. That was about 18 months ago. Time has moved on. Not a tremendous amount has happened in that time, except most recently there was a soft market testing exercise undertaken by the previous administration. Which really went out there to look for different people to come forward with different options for how to take the site forward, and the consultation documents and all of the options that are presented in that are expressed in this report as well. Chair, what we've arrived at is a position to move forward in principle, working in conjunction with the now University Hospitals Dorset, because they've got this new status, and with it an increased level of capital to actually really take what was always this vision forward in a very collaborative way, but to do so by way of selling a little bit of the Wessex Field land to the university hospitals in conjunction with the Bournemouth University. and then after that work together on the rest of the site to really look forward at delivering the vision that we always intended. As I said before, I'm extremely excited about this, not least because we have had a memorandum of understanding signed with our two partners here for well over a couple of years now, which talk about, and this is in section 10 of the report, of what we're really aiming to do with this Science and Meditech Park, which is to facilitate economic development, job creation on the site, to help with the the expansion of the University Hospitals Dorset, the wider health and care provision, which is all part of the clinical services review and how the hospitals have expanded and changed as we've seen, to really look at putting sustainable travel at the heart of this as well, and that's something that was always centre of this and will remain centre of this going forward, and to really look at that health-related research, education sector and harness that for what could be commercial opportunities on the site to springboard from that sector, and create what could be up to 2,000 jobs there. So I'm really pleased to now finally be making some decisions on this, to finally take this forward. So it does, I won't take you through the whole report because I'm sure you've all read it, but the real crux of what this this report is saying is to take this to the next level, to recommend that Council progresses with the principle of disposal of part of the site to University Hospitals Dorset, which, working together with Bournemouth University, will take forward this research and science part of the site, and then work together with those partners to develop the rest of the site. We've got an advanced master plan already. Obviously, we can use that as a basis for moving forward. I've seen the master plan. It's broadly speaking what we always wanted. So again, working in collaboration, we can really start to take forward and make that happen. A couple of things to draw out within the report. I don't have direct at the moment delineation of exactly which land that we are going to be selling to them, because what this report is doing is agreeing the principle, and those negotiations are going on, or will go on, subject to approval of this with the University Hospitals Dorset, to figure out exactly which bit of land that they would be purchasing from us. But broadly speaking, it would be the land that's directly adjacent to their land, which enables them, in conjunction with the university, to then bring that bit forward. But of course, it does go much deeper than that, because although we're only selling one bit of the land to them, working with that memorandum of understanding and also working with the very positive relationship we have with our partners here, we are agreeing that we are then going to go forward in more detailed partnership for the rest of the site, and that rest of the site could and should include key worker housing, particularly for hospital staff on the site, but also, as I mentioned earlier, some commercial opportunities to really make the best of that science park opportunity and create the jobs, as much as possible. So happy to take any further questions on that, but I think the summary is this is where we always wanted to be. I'm really grateful, and I would like to put on record the excellent working relationship we have with the hospital and the university, who have been working hand in hand with us to take this forward. As it says in the options appraisal, I think the hospital would probably have liked to have bought the whole site off of us, but actually I think we've now arrived at an even better position where they can purchase the bit of site that they really wanted to have and can really develop the science and research part in conjunction with the university, and actually develop the rest of the site in collaboration, because one of the intricacies of how these partnerships work is that even though we can often work at a semi-glacial period process in terms of trying to get things off the ground as a local authority, the processes are even harder for our public sector partners, particularly in the health service. So actually utilising the ability we have to take things for instance, such as borrowing for the key worker housing, and also the other commercial aspects of the site, actually working in collaboration, us retaining that land probably means that we could get on with this quicker. So happy to take any questions, but the recommendations A, B and C are there, and happy to answer any questions from.
Thank you very much, Councillor Broadhead. Councillor Millier, you were first up, then we've got Councillor Borthwick and then Councillor Howell. So Councillor Millier, please.
Thank you, Chair. I I was really pleased to see this sort of carried forward and developed a little bit further. I think for me in particular, bringing educational facilities locally is one of the best things we can do for our local economy, and particularly around sort of healthcare education and helping to plug that gap where we've got a bit of a skills deficit locally to have basically enough carers and healthcare assistants and doctors and nurses in our area to deal with demand. But what I did want to ask is, I was having, it might have just been me, but I had some technical difficulties actually getting the results of the soft consultation. So I just wanted to ask if there were, who else was interested in the site, not naming any names, but just from a, and also being commercially sensitive, but just to find out what other interest there was in development there. Would that be possible?
Yes, I can. I'm trying to get the paper. Sorry, Chair. Shall I jump in?
Oh yeah, carry on.
I'm trying to get the papers up as we speak, so I can give you the detail. It is attached in the appendices, or at least it should be. I think it's in 3 different appendices: appendices 1, 2, and 3, which give all of the responses. But broadly speaking, Councillor Earl, they responded to what they were actually asked to respond to, which essentially, and I'll just bring up the detail here. The soft market testing was to look at the principles of the MOU that we'd already had with the university and to bring forward ways to bring that forward. By and large, they fell into 2 categories. The first one was the hospital offering essentially to say, well, we'll take the whole site off your hands. And that was one of the options on the table. The rest of them came from essentially the private sector, who were offering to predominantly work in partnership with the hospital and essentially to leverage their covenant to commercialise the site. And of course, some of the problems with that approach was that there were a lot of assumptions within there from the private sector developers. So the assumption was that the hospitals and the university would agree to that. You know, that's an assumption. And again, one of the sweeteners that I think a lot of the private sector responses were putting forward was the ability to help fund it, and also probably to bring some money up front by, again, leveraging that covenant, giving some money up front as a joint partner with the council. So it looks good on paper because a nice chunk of money up front always looks good. But of course, as we've explored, and as you'll hear from the leader many times, we are in a favourable position as local authorities to be able to borrow money. We have strong covenants ourselves as well. And actually, if we were really looking to maximise a return for the council taxpayer, it would be beneficial certainly to work directly with those partners rather than have an intermediate sitting in the middle and invariably taking their slice, particularly when we have a clear direction here. But also it's about delivery. And I think the part of the reason that I think we've now got a really good working arrangement with the hospital about, although sharing the ownership of the land in 2 bits, but working together as a whole, is that collectively we have that joint control to take this forward at pace. So the University Hospital Dorset at the moment have a capital amount to spend on this. So they're in a position where they can purchase the land and they can start getting on with that. Obviously, we've made this a political priority, and it's something that we want to prioritise and use all of the mechanisms that we've got available as well. So really, the way that we've come up, which is not one of the outcomes of the soft testing, but essentially a little bit of both, probably more of a flavour of the kind of the direct relationship and working partnership with the hospital, is that we can both maximise the result for the council taxpayers and get on at pace and scale. But I've tried to bring up the appendices. I'm not having much luck either, but they are all in there, and it gives you a little bit of a summary of what each of the outcomes were. But broadly speaking, it was generally private sector developers wanting to work in partnership with the council, leveraging the covenant of the university and the hospital.
Councillor Earl, are you content?
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm really content with that answer, and I'm just looking forward now to seeing what plans come out of it, really, and seeing the project move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Borthwick.
I think that it's an excellent report, and I move the adoption of the report.
Okay. Thank you. I don't think we need to actually have to adopt a report. I think we, provided we all agree with it, we don't have to do anything other than just agree it. Councillor Howell, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just generally pleased with this. The administration seems to be following forward with the proposals that the previous administration, the Unity Alliance administration, developed alongside the hospital and university. It seems that the previous administration made some pretty big changes to make the site more sustainable, and I hope those gains will continue forward in the current proposals. And the one concern I have is because we don't have a map of the proposed area that would be transferred to the hospital and university at this stage, it is kind of difficult to get a feel for exactly how the scale of what would happen in perhaps the first phase. Councillor Broadhead will have seen a indicative proposal plan that the hospital university provided regarding the area they wanted for the technical aspects of the delivery. So I would say those are the things that are related to living lab and you know, biotech or medical activities that have a relationship to the hospital university. Can I ask him whether the amount of land that is envisaged to be transferred in this first stage would be sufficient to accommodate those aspects? So obviously I'm excluding the accommodation, residential accommodation, etc., but I'm trying to get a feel for whether the current plan as envisaged by our partners is the core, you know, business elements is deliverable within the package of land that we intend to transfer.
Councillor Broadhead, I know you've said that the map is not yet available, and you did explain why. But if you can give some degree of comfort to Councillor Howells, that would. But if you could do it fairly quickly, thank you.
I can, so I won't show you the drawing that my 5-year-old has just given me as well, that she made at school, which is always a nice addition to the day. Councillor Howell's exactly right. The core aim of the university and the hospital is to deliver that technical side of things. Which isn't in and of itself massively commercial, because it's going to be focused on the USPs that both the university and the hospital will take forward in that meditech sector. Having said that, it is vitally important for the rest of the site, because if you do want to create something which is a little bit deeper than just a business park, and you really want to create something which will attract those specialist tech jobs that you really want to do, you have to leverage off against that particular that USP that they bring to the table. It's almost a lost leader, if you like. But I think that the point that really must, so yes, you're right, that the bit of land that we are looking to sell to them is that core bit of land that is directly associated with that. However, what I've tried to do in the introduction, what I've tried to do as well in the paper, is to go a little bit further, because this is not just a paper about selling a little bit of land off to one of our close partners. This is, I think, the first real concrete step in actually taking this development forward in partnership with them. Our visions are aligned, our visions both about the job creation, the science and development and research, but also about the key worker housing provision on site, and that sustainability as well. And I'll risk the attempt at one-upmanship, but part of the reason I did bring out at the beginning that this seemed like a finale, if you like, or at least the end of the beginning to the job, was that we are in exactly the place that I've always said I wanted to be at. So I pay great respect to the team for the last 18 months for the work that they have done. Having said that, I don't think we're dramatically in a different place from where we ever were. And actually that sustainability part, I think, has and always been completely key to it, whether you're talking about bus, cycling provision, and a number of different parts. It can and should be part of every single new development we do. Not only is it no different here, but because of the sensitive location, I think it's more important here than ever before. And I'm really pleased that we share that aspiration with our close partners here as well. But yes, in answer to your question, don't have a map, but it is exactly as you explained, the core part of the site. But it does go much deeper than that. By not taking forward the rest of the options that came through in the soft market testing, what we are saying is we're going to do this ourselves, we're going to do it in collaboration with our partners, and we're going to do it quickly.
Thank you, Councillor Broadhead. Does that give you the reassurance you're looking for, Councillor Howes?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Kelsey.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. I was just going to concur with Councillor Milley-Earl, saying the fact that this is going to be a medical facility is wonderful news. Being a man of many medical needs with transplants, etc., I think it's vital that we are in the area of having this sort of facility with us, and I look forward for it being done in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Kelsey. There's no one else wishing to speak, but I would just like to say that, you know, I was very excited by this paper. I think it's really nice to hear that, you know, opposite ends of the political divide here are in unity on this particular scheme. So that is really nice to see, and we really look forward to that coming forward. It really is an exciting development for the area and for the towns. So thank you. I'm going to move on to agenda item 10 now, which is the future meeting dates for 2021. Well, we have one more in December. And that's it. This is the last one, actually, isn't it? Apart from this evening and next year, if you could just make a note of those. And I think that now concludes our business for this afternoon. And I think Claire, did you want to come in?
Chairman, I just wanted to very quickly mention that the date for next year, 3rd of January 2022, is actually a bank holiday, so that will need to be amended, but it hasn't yet gone through council, so it can be done.
Right, thank you, Claire. So before we shut down, could I just
especially as next year is 2021, not 2022.
Well, I seem to remember that the dates we've got here is for 2021 and 2022. That's what it says in front of me.
Far too far ahead for us oldies, Steve.
So thank you, members. Thank you very much for some lively discussions, and thank you in particular to members of the public that tuned in to watch the overviewed scrutiny process in reality and in a virtual meeting. So anyway, if you enjoyed it this afternoon, please join us this evening at 6 o'clock for our second session. So thank you very much. I'll see you later, members.